Welcome to another episode of Quick Thoughts On, a video series in which I share with you, as the title suggests, my quick thoughts on a Star Trek episode. This time I'm going to talk about the animated series episode Once Upon a Time. It's so hard to do a sequel. Most of the sequels just do the same thing as the original did, just slightly differently. There are very few sequels which do this correctly. Probably the best sequel ever, in my opinion, is the 1980 movie The Empire Strikes Back. It takes the characters from a small independent 1977 movie called Star Wars, maybe some of you have heard of it, and created a new adventure for them, plus all of the characters grow a bit. They are different people, or aliens if you will, than the characters they played 3 years before. And the movie works also as a standalone movie. Many of the Star Trek movies do this correctly too, of course. For example, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, is a great sequel to Star Trek the Motion Picture. But for example, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock is, at least in my opinion, a fine example of a sequel done incorrectly. Why? Well, the story of Star Trek III exists only to negate the story of Star Trek II. But I'll talk about the movie sometimes in the future. Let's go to Once Upon a Time. Why did I start to talk about sequels? Well, today's episode is again a sequel to an episode from the live-action Star Trek, the episode in question being Shore Leave. We have seen sequels to original series episodes before. More Tribbles, More Troubles was one of them. Even though I liked More Tribbles, More Troubles, I admit that David Gerrold repeats many of the original stories, plot points, and story beats. And this episode seems that it's also going to repeat all the plot points from the original episode. For example, when McCoy, Uhura, and Sulu beam down to the planet, they beam down to the place where they beam down in the live-action episode. They even start to remember how they met the White Rabbit and Alice from Alice in Wonderland. And of course, they there suddenly appear. But for some reason, this time the rabbit looks and behaves like a rabbit. It's not a big problem, to be honest, but I'd really prefer if they kept the huge humanoid rabbit and the animated Alice looked more like the girl who played her in the original episode, just for better continuity, but as I said, it doesn't bother me that much. Well, the next sequence of shots looks unintentionally creepy. First, we zoom out from a still image of Uhura sitting at a lake. It looks a bit creepy because Nichelle Nichols clearly hums a melody, but the drawn Uhura doesn't move a muscle. Then we cut to Sulu listening to her, making a slightly creepy smile and suddenly looking to a different direction, to a house which looks like taken from 19th century American South. You know, the type of house in which Uhura's ancestor would probably be, quote-unquote, working. But I'm probably looking way too much into it. It's probably just a bizarre coincidence. Even McCoy likes the house, but suddenly there is the Queen of Hearts and her guard soldiers, and she screams, "Off with his hat!" Before McCoy has a chance to ask WTF is going on, one of the guards throws his spear axe thing. Sorry, I have no clue how is this thing called in English. At the tree next to McCoy. Not sure if that was supposed to be just a warning shot or if the guard is supposed to suck at aiming. Wouldn't it be much more dramatic if that spear almost hit McCoy and he had to dodge it in the last second? But still, Bones doesn't waste any time and runs away calling for transport. When he beams to the ship, Uhura takes her communicator and tries to contact the ship to find out what just happened. But first her communicator and then she herself gets kidnapped by a white flying robot. Back on the ship, McCoy explains what happened. When he says to Spock that he definitely did not think about a queen trying to decapitate him and that they lost contact with Uhura, They try to contact the caretaker, the old man who was running the planet when they were there last time. Kirk assumes that something bad is happening and they have to go down again, and gives the command of the ship to Arex. Why Arex? Usually he gave command to Scotty when both him and Spock were leaving the ship. Did the writers not see the original Star Trek? I mean, it's not like Arex will do something brilliant to save the ship, and in the end Scotty will take the command, so why was this Arex thing necessary? Meanwhile, we find out that what happened to Uhura. The main computer kidnapped her because he thinks that she's a slave to the Sky Machine in the orbit. Again, seeing a black woman in chains and talking about slavery and master makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, not really sure why. When Kirk and the gang beam down, they discover a tombstone, which says that the caretaker is dead and buried under it. So they now know that they need to somehow get down to the control center. They want to drill down using the ship's phaser drill thingy. That's when we find out that the Enterprise starts to malfunction. The transporter doesn't work, the hangar doors can't be opened, so our heroes are on their own. They find signs showing the direction to the underground entrance, and for some reason they follow them, even though it's an obvious trap. And of course, the signs lead them to a cave surrounded by purple pterodactyls. They of course attack them, and because the phasers suddenly won't work, what a surprise, they have to hide in the cave. Just as Kirk says that the planet is playing cat and mouse with them, a giant orange cat appears. But it's not Garfield, this pussy is pissed. Maybe he doesn't like Mondays. Anyway, now we cut to a collection of some random stock shots of the Enterprise flying to different directions. We find out that it's supposed to mean that the Enterprise suddenly changed course, but thankfully Mr. Arex presses the button to manual override, after which the Enterprise returns back to orbit. Now Scotty finds out that the computer has from somewhere received a collection of new commands, and it looks like somebody's trying to learn how to fly the ship. Our heroes down on the planet meanwhile have a new plan. Last time when they were here, Dr. McCoy was mortally wounded, and then he was brought to the control center when he was repaired. So they assume that if Bones injects something to a volunteer, the planet will think he's dead and brings him to the control center too. Kirk offers himself, but Spock is a much better subject thanks to his knowledge of computers. In the last moment, one of the white robot appears and grabs Spock. The others follow him, but the cave closes behind the robot. Then Kirk runs forward, jumps to the open cave door, which was closed a moment ago, and then it closes again. Okay, whatever, Filmation. Sulu and McCoy don't make it, but they have a new problem, a red fire-breathing dragon. Spock gains consciousness, and with Kirk, they run to the room with the main computer. Back on the Enterprise, Scotty finds out that a new computer was built on the Enterprise and tries to take over the ship. That's why the gravity doesn't work anymore. Spock, Kirk, and Uhura persuade the planet's computer that they're not slaves of the Enterprise, that humans and machines coexist and work together. That for some reason persuades the computer, who until now thought that machines are superior and should therefore rule the galaxy over the organic creatures, suddenly changes his mind and offers to be the good computer who always fulfills all they want again. And apparently Sulu and McCoy wanted to have a picnic with the Rabbit, Alice, and the Red Dragon. Well, who am I to judge them, right? If I should describe this episode with just 3 words, it would be something like dumb but entertaining. There are a couple of moments which don't make very much sense. The computer's main plan wasn't very well developed, and there are a few shots which made me feel pretty uncomfortable. Uhura is a bit underused too. I originally thought that the reason why she spends in the story so much time alone with the crazy computer is that she will somehow be more proactive in the change of his mind. But no, she's just a typical damsel in distress, which is a pity. Uhura is much more interesting than that. The ending seems a bit rushed, especially now in 2017 when every story needs a third act full of shiny explosions and insane battles, but as I said, it's a very entertaining episode. This is one of the few animated episodes when I find myself truly invested in the story and really wish that our heroes succeed. Overall, I think that I would give this episode 8 out of 10. For what it is, it's really well done. Anyway, as always, these are just my opinions about the episode. Tell me, what do you think about this episode, especially if you have seen it, of course. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or did you think it was just okay? Leave your comments down in the comment section. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. Feel free to watch all of the previous episodes I've done over the last months, and maybe come back next week when I talk about the next episode from the animated series called Matt's Passion, which is, by the way, another episode which is a sequel to an episode from the original series. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next week. Bye. Bye.